Hey, Shalom. I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Akakwadash. I'd like to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace, salutation, and blessings to the elect who firmly believe in Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Now, the title of this lesson is going to be Lifestyle Over Phase. Lifestyle Over Phase. And the title came to my the lesson came to my mind, to my spirit, earlier this morning while being on the treadmill, right? Because if you have certain fitness goals that you have for yourself, whether you want to lose a certain amount of pounds, if you want to look aesthetic, you want to have a certain physical aesthetic, you just want to have mental clarity, you want to build up your stamina or whatever the case may be, the spirit hit me that you have to make working out a lifestyle, to accomplish certain goals over it just being a phase, right? Because you got certain people who just go through the phase, who just go through the motions, and then they give up. However, if you make it your lifestyle, if you learn to love it, if you love to endure the pain, the sufferings, the tribulations while accomplishing those goals, aesthetically, spiritually, physically, mentally, you have to make it your lifestyle, right? Not only that, you gotta have a certain type of eating habits. Your eating habits have to contain, more importantly, of whole foods as opposed to junk food, right, or fast food, right? And being on a treadmill, I'm like, hey, that's the same way with this truth. Even with this truth, you gotta have a certain dietary habit as far as food consumption. We have a dietary law that we have to abide by. When it comes to this truth, just like the gym, we have to be consistent. We have to be persistent. We have to be disciplined. And above all, we got to have faith in the process, right? So I just typed in on Google, life over phase meaning, right? And it provides, some pretty good information. It says lifestyle over phase suggests a conscious choice, right? First and foremost, let's get into that real quick. Conscious. And as far as what the scriptures say about conscious, right? Oh boy, it's Satan. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 14. Start at verse 2. It says, blessed is he whose conscience have not condemned him, and who is not fallen from his hope in the Lord. That's right. So we want to make sure we have a clear conscience, a spiritual astute conscience, a conscience that makes good and great decisions.
Round up spare change into saving.
Right? Good and great decisions. That's what we want to have, right? So going back here, it says lifestyle over faith suggests a conscious choice to make a way of living a priority rather than viewing it as a temporary or fleeting stage. That's right, because priorities is what matters. Priorities is what you're gonna put first. When it comes to doing shows and doing lessons, I recommend, do it first thing in the morning, when you could, because you never know what the day may bring. You may get tired, you may get frustrated, you may get angry, throughout whatever may happen throughout the day. However, you get it out early in the morning, that business is taken care of. Same way with working out. I feel like the best time to work out is essentially in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Because it allows the mind to be more creative throughout the day. You know what I'm saying? And you have more of a mental clarity of your mind, to take on the challenges that the day may also bring, right? So that's just, recommendation, advice, so to speak. It says, suggest conscious choice to make a way of living a priority rather than viewing it as a temporary or fleeting stage. It's about embracing a specific way of life as a lasting identity or approach rather than something that's expected to change or be outgrown. And that's really the nature of a female. You don't want to be one that's subject to change, right? The scriptures say that. Let me see if I can find it actually. Oh, let me see if I can find it in a pot.
Saving stocks of Bitcoin, can you use your Cash App card?
Give me 17 cents on Bitcoin.
See. Winnow. Well, let's go with the winnow with every win because that kind of taps into it. This is the book of Sirach or Ecclesiasticus chapter 5 verse 9. And it reads, winnow not with every wind, and go not into every way. For so doth the sinner that have a double tongue. That's right. Here it is. You going into this religion. You going into that religion. You going into that religion. Now you find yourself being a mixed nut. You know. Now you find yourself being confused. You know, that's the type of individual you do not want to be. You know what I'm saying? Once you open your mind and your spirit to this truth, be open-minded to this truth, get grounded in this truth so you know what's righteous and you know what's wicked. You know what I'm saying? And close the door. Close the door. You know, once you got this truth, once you got this information, because when other bullshit comes your way, you're going to be able to filter the truth from the matter, from the lies of the matter, right? That's why it's important, to stick to the script, be disciplined, right? It says, here's a more detailed explanation phase. This typically refers to a period of time characterized by a particular state or activity that is likely to be temporary. It can be used to describe a temporary interest, behavior, or stage of life. Right. For example, you may have somebody who wants to get into the boxing gym. I like to use boxing a lot because it works so well with the truth once you experience the two. Now you got have one person who may watch, let's say Floyd Mayweather, over the weekend. All of a sudden, he wants to box. He wants to go into the gym and fight. And then he see what it really entails, right? And he may endure for a week or two or even a month, and now he doesn't want to do it no more because he might have got hit too hard, or the coach talked to him a certain way. Whatever the case may be, right? That was just a phase. You know what I'm saying? But once you learn to love the nastiness, of working out when it comes to the sport of boxing, you can allow it to become a lifestyle because you learn to love it. Now, of course, for myself, sometimes I'm not even as diligent in it as I should be because, the world, you know what I'm saying? You got to go to work, you know what I'm saying? You got to find other means to get some money, you know what I'm saying, to stay afloat. So it takes time from that. But in essence, I always make sure I'm on my physical fitness. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing I always make sure, whether I walk, whether I do some sit-ups, whether I do some crunches, do some dips, I make sure I, get that in, And it says, now, as opposed to lifestyle, it says this refers to a way of life that is adopted and sustained over a long period, often reflecting one's values, preferences, and goals. It's a conscious and consistent way of living. That's right. And that's why the scriptures say, give diligence, to make your calling and election sure. That's the only way, we're going to be able to receive the kingdom is by way of giving diligence. It's a book of 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 2. It says, wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure, for if you do these things, ye shall never fall. That's one who made this truth their life, a lifestyle. If you're able to do that, it's a lifestyle. You're programmed at this point, It says, and what helps it become a lifestyle is the results that you get. A lot of times, if you don't see yourself growing in the spirit, another brother may, bring it out how you've grown in the spirit. And that's essentially coming from the Heavenly Father telling you to keep going. Same way with the gym. First time you go in the gym, you may not have to throw a jab, but one, you may not know how to throw it straight, which they call it two. You may not know how to throw a three, which is a hook. You know what I'm saying? But as time goes on and the more you keep practicing, now you're putting those combinations together. You're able to defend and, be offensive simultaneously. That takes practice, that takes work, that takes sparring. you know, and within 3 to 6 months, you see yourself getting a whole lot better. I've seen certain guys come in the gym look like shit. They get their ass kicked, you know, but they, stay on that bag. And then you get your endurance built up. Once you get your endurance built up, you make a complete 180 from the person from when you first came in into the gym. Same way with this truth. The truth works the same way, but the only way you can get better at something is by way of making it a lifestyle and not just a phase, man. Not just a phase. I think there's something in Hebrews that kind of go with this as well. I think it's Hebrews, the 6th chapter. Let me see if I could. It's Hebrews 6 and 11. Right, this is the book of Hebrews, chapter 6. I'm going to start at verse 9. But beloved, we are persuaded better things of you and things that accompany salvation, though we thus speak. For Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which ye have showed toward his name, and that ye have ministered to the saints and do minister. That's right. Because we dedicated our life to this truth. We made this truth a lifestyle and not a phase. Right. So the Lord is not, he's not one to forget, the work that we put in for him, the work that we put in with nobody seeing, so to speak. Right. It says, and we desire that every one of you do show the same diligence to the full assurance of hope unto the end. Unto the end. That's what you call a lifestyle. We want to do this all the way into the end. Like the scriptures tell us, he that endureth unto the end, the same shall be saved. If you look at this truth as if it's just a phase, you're not going to endure into the end. You're not. You got certain brothers that just put on a garment because they saw the apostles calling a black woman, you're a slut, you're a slut, you're a slut. They was in it for the wrong reasons. They was in it for the wrong reasons. The guys who look at this truth as a hangout, the guys who look at this truth for some type of vainglory, they're going to view it as a phase and not a lifestyle. Verse 12, it says, and that ye be not slothful, but followers of them who through faith and patience inherit the promises. That's right. So it's all about being patient as well. It's all about being patient. The phrase emphasizes lifestyle over phase. The phrase emphasizes a decision to prioritize and embrace the particular way of life as a long-term commitment rather than treating it as a passing interest or stage. It suggests a deliberate choice to make that way of life a core part of one's identity and actions. That's right. Because it's about, hey, man, and shout out to the scriptures, man. And that's why I like to, go through the spirit. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have anything really planned out. But as I'm reading, the scriptures is coming to mind. I believe it's James 1 and 21. This is James chapter 1, verse 21. It says, wherefore lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. That's right. This word is able to save our souls as long as we abide by it. We have to abide by this word in order to be delivered and saved. So we got to get rid of what we thought we knew. We got to get rid of certain habits. You can't find yourself going into the gym. Here it is. You may have been a person who always ate some Popeyes, French fries. You may have drank liquor, maybe let's say 3 days out the week, 4 days out the week. But now you got to lay all of that away. If you want to box, if you have intentions on losing weight, you got to stop drinking. You can eat everything healthy, but if you drink liquor, guess what? That weight is never coming off you. It's never coming off you. Same way with this truth. You can't find yourself going into these churches. You can't find yourself committing adultery. You can't find yourself robbing, stealing, and killing, but still trying to call yourself an Israelite. You got to lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, man. You know what I mean? To be the best version of yourself, you got to get rid of your old self. You know what I'm saying? The certain self of you, certain characteristics you keep, and there's certain habits you got to get rid of. Right? Verse 22, that's the point. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own self. And in order to be a doer of the word, you got to look at this truth as a lifestyle. As a lifestyle. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. you know? And that's the point. Like it says here. It says it suggests a deliberate choice to make that way of life a core part of one's identity and actions. One's identity, like you guys, there's certain individuals, that I've noticed, I'm saying, in the world, you know, because I move a certain way, according to the scriptures. And I see certain individual, attempt to move like me, he tries to pick my brain and everything and try to incorporate himself into me, but he doesn't live the lifestyle that I live when it comes to this truth. So it's coming off as if he's a fraud in a sense. You know what I'm saying? I see it, I peep it, but I just ignore it. You know what I'm saying? Because the walk in which I walk, he can't walk because the spirit is not on him, so to speak. So this truth got to be of your core identity. The problem is a lot of Jake, they're having an identity crisis. They don't know who they are. They don't even know who they want to become, or they may know who they want to become, but what it takes to become that requires work, requires discipline, requires structure, you know? And it's a certain energy that comes with it, It says someone might say they're in a phase of trying out new hobbies, but eventually they might choose to focus on one specific activity and develop it into a lifestyle. And that's true. It says a person might describe their single life as a phase while another might embrace it as a lifestyle, which is true. And honestly, what I'm saying, to be in this truth, the best way to have a lifestyle is one that is single. Because with becoming with being in a relationship, if she's not the right woman, she can become a further burden unto you. She could become more of a headache unto you. You know what I'm saying? It could become more of a responsibility that she don't need. You know what I'm saying? It's called throwing monkey wrenches in a game. You don't want a woman who's going to throw a monkey wrench in your process of growth when it comes to this truth. It says someone might say they're going through a phase of wanting to eat a certain way, but if they consistently adopt a healthy eating pattern, they might consider it a lifestyle. That's right. And I'm reading this right here with you, brothers. You know what I'm saying? Like I made those statements earlier, but I didn't even get to this point. You know what I'm saying? I'm reading it with you, brothers. We learning together. You know what I'm saying? We just marrying the scriptures with it. And that's true. Once you see the benefits, once you see the results, you make it a lifestyle. You make it a lifestyle. Of course, life is going to get in the way, but you can't let it trump you, so to speak. Parable of the sower. I'm gonna end off with that. The parable of the sower. Because those who felt the Fallout Boys, they're pretty much in this truth, in essence, of a phase, right? This is the book of Matthew, chapter 13, verse 18. It says, "Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside." And that goes for the individuals who be walking past the camp. They might like what they heard, or they want to hear them further. They get a phone call, or they see somebody in the street, and poof, be gone. That's the Lord, right? That's the Lord rejecting them. Verse 20, "But he that receives seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended." This is an individual that dealt with this truth in the form of a phase, right? He wasn't rooted. Verse 22, "He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful." Now he fell into a bag. He got some money. This is another individual who dealt with this word in the form of a phase. Verse 23, "But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also bear fruit and bringeth forth some an 100-fold, some 60, some 30. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm gonna pretty much end that right there. And this is the individual who considered this truth as a lifestyle. As a lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? So it's the significant difference. There's a significant difference, man. And we want to be likened to those individuals, those men, the hopeful elect, who treat this truth as a lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? It's your identity. It's who you are. Not who you want to be. It's who you are. You know what I'm saying? Like the scriptures say, the spirit of the prophets is subject unto the prophets. You are who you are. No matter where you are, there you are. You know what I'm saying? You are who you are. You got some individuals that's going to want your light. You're going to have some individuals that want your type of energy, but they haven't done what you've done to acquire it. Everybody wants Floyd Mayweather's record, but while they was in the club partying, drinking, while they didn't have a fight coming up, what was Mayweather doing? He'll go to the club, but guess what he's drinking? He probably drinking water, cranberry juice. And when these guys is drunk in the Uber going home, Floyd Mayweather is running home. That's the difference. You know what I'm saying? So, there's another scripture that I had in mind. It's a perdition. It's just a word. I know it's in Corinthians. Let me see. Right now, who draw back. Right, this is it. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35. And it reads, cast not away therefore your confidence, which have great recompense of reward. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of Yahweh, you might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall not have no pleasure in him. Those who took this word, this truth as a face, the Lord's not going to have no pleasure in him, right? This is verse 39. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. That's right, because we made this truth a lifestyle. Matter of fact, I think there's another one that came to mind. So Luke chapter 9, verse 62. And Yahushua said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of Yahweh. That's right. So if you put your hand to the plow and you look back, you viewed this truth as a phase. And guess what the Lord's going to do? Not have pleasure in you. But there is some cases of the prodigal son. You know what I'm saying? There is some cases of the prodigal son where the Lord had to work a strange work within a particular individual, but you don't want to tempt the Lord, essentially. So, pretty much that's all I got, on this topic. Lord willing, you was edified. So with that, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. I'd like to, Ba'ashem Kakwadash, I'd like to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace, salutation, and blessings to the elect. Shalom.